Hi, welcome to my channel. This is Hannah. I got this cute cabinet I found on Facebook Marketplace for free, and that is my favorite word. Um, I'm just checking it out further because when you get something, you don't want to be like staring at it. I mean, it's a free piece. So I looked at it, looked good. I brought it home, and so I did a little test to check out the wood because that's the part I wanted to be raw wood. And I was surprised how great it looked. I didn't know it was a solid piece. It really is solid. And so I was taking the handles off. I decided to take off the cabinet doors because I figured it would be much easier to paint it, sand it, and to like shine up the handles and all the hardware and make everything match up really nice. I thought about replacing this backer board. I just knew I had to take it off so that I could get inside and work on the shelves. With it off, I really had, some space to kind of work through the back and the front, and I saw this was a solid shelf, and I was happy about that. It was just a little bit of, I don't know, like something spilled on it or something. It was a little sticky. Um, so instead of just using the rag, I had to use a scrub at the same time. Um, the drawers inside, even though I was able to kind of clean them out, they had some kind of stain in there, maybe an ink stain or something like that. So I did start lining drawers anyway, so I already knew I was going to have to line this drawer just to make sure it looked its best. The hardware, I just wanted to clean up a little bit of stickiness. I knew I was going to paint them, so I was going to color them, so it didn't matter too much. I didn't really want to wait 24 hours, and all the other tutorials I saw was a long wait to kind of polish them up, and then I didn't know if they were going to actually be nicely polished or were they going to turn some off color. So I just wanted to paint them, color them. Even though I had every intention to paint this drawer front, I did decide just to sand it down to the base. Since it's solid wood, why not have a nice clean start? I knew the top of this was going to be stained, so I knew this would have to be sanded down. And I thought the base should be sanded down too. I didn't want any risk of, I guess I was thinking, okay, maybe the base is a little big, and if I make it wood, it will stand out. But I figure it also would be better for it to just be as natural as possible so that it wouldn't chip up or anything if someone bangs it against anything. It's just better for it to be natural. And then, even though I'm supposed to scuff sand the sides, I kind of started sanding on them too. I just found that it was just coming off kind of effortlessly. You know, it wasn't a hard stain to remove, which I was really glad for that. But then I start to see the wood underneath the sides, and a part of me was like, do I really want to paint over this beautiful wood? You know, I was just supposed to leave the top and the base out and then paint everything else. And then like the shelf was going to be natural too. But I was like, oh my goodness, now I'm looking at the sides of this. I'm like, I may have to change my plans. Okay, I'm just like rolling my eyes just looking at this part, because I got a spray primer because I thought this would make my life easier and I can just spray the doors down. But just like the issues I've been having with my spray colors, this is what's happening. A brand new bottle. This is my first time using it. The nozzle wants to get stuck. It wants to come out all choppy, and I was just trying to push through it. And, well, I regret it. And at some point, it just stopped working anyway. So I'm like, this was a waste. And it was a lot for me to sand to organize it. But I did wipe it down. And then I said I'll sand it because it was just a mess. And this was the paint I bought to use. This paint, not cheap at all. And I was going to, of course, use the other primer because I had to prime the piece too. And the paint that I was using was going to be white. So when you're definitely painting white, you have to prime. There is no ifs, ands, or buts about it. So I committed myself to do this piece in white in certain parts, and I told myself that this is a very popular color. Doing stuff in white, just like doing stuff in black, is very popular. And even though I was stressed about it, nauseated about it, because white is so difficult, you know, I'm working on my second coat here, and I didn't want it to turn yellow. And then I'm like, Hannah, you're staining part of it. How are you going to prevent it from turning yellow when you're not supposed to touch it? And then I finally was like, okay, calm down and try to figure out how you're going to apply all this stuff without it messing up the other area. So I decided, I can't do this white thing. So I went to Sherwin-Williams, the Sage Grown paint in satin, and I said I'm going to take a risk and do a color that is definitely beautiful and popular, but it's also not something that's like people normally go for. Like, people normally go for the traditional colors that match what's in their room, what's in their house. So I am taking a risk doing this in a sage color. So I just think it's so beautiful, especially when I see people do it and they have these greens and blues, and they're gorgeous. So I broke down and said I'm going to do this in the green. And I'm telling you, it was like a weight lifted off my shoulders as I was just rolling this paint on, because I knew that I wouldn't have to worry about, 1,000 coats. With the white paint, I would have to do at least 3-4 coats. I knew with this one, it probably would just been 2 coats, and I didn't have to worry about any off coloring. I also, earlier, I didn't have it taped like this. And then I said, you need to stop playing because it need to be taped to make sure the edges are nice and sharp. So I taped even more. I had some taped and then I taped even more to make sure. And this was so awkward. Oh my gosh, trying to get everywhere. I had it on the floor. I had it on a table, and then I think I have it a different way later. I have another table that's a little bit lower. You can change the heights and stuff, because it was very difficult trying to figure out how to maneuver everywhere. Okay, with the front, I did forego the primer because now we're dealing with a darker color. So I'm like, yeah. So the front, I just sanded it down and then used a tiny brush to kind of get around this front design because it did not come off. And so I had to just do what I can do. Yeah. If you haven't by now, could you please subscribe to my channel? I have a lot of interesting things that I do post. Usually I do post weekly, but it has been 2 weeks because I was working on this piece and I just didn't want to rush it. Sometimes you're under pressure to make sure you post something, but then if your piece is not done yet and you run into some hiccups, you just have to slow down and get it done, I decided to use the roller over it because it kind of takes away the marks. I know I'm a little late with that. And then now I'm just kind of sanding it. I have a second setup on the side with another table, which is higher than my work table. And I like it because I need it to be a little bit higher, and I also needed more space to work with. I want to lay everything out. So this is the backer board. I decided to paint it to look nice and pretty and green when you open the cabinets. Everything is going to be green except for that shelf. The handles I thought would look really pretty in gold. And so I said gold and green, of course, that's perfect. You know? And so sometime in between whatever I was doing, these were out being painted and waiting for me to put back in. Now I thought a nice dark stain would go great on the shells, and I have used this before on a previous project where I thought it looked so dark and it was freaking me out that it would be too dark of a stain to put on here. And so even though I'm rubbing it on here and it looks black, like I'm trying not to freak out, and I just keep adding more and more on there, trying not to freak out, because I'm like, this looks really, really dark. I really hope this wipes up, but just trying not to be my normal paranoid self. I usually do a little bit and then wipe and test, but for some reason, I'm just trusting the process. Until I start wiping it and I realize it's so dark. I'm like, this is not good. I'm gonna have to get this off and sand it. And this was not a happy moment because I was almost done and now I had to sand it. I'm not gonna show you all that because that was a mess, and I probably stopped filming because I just wanted to fix this issue. I rubbed and rubbed and it was not going to come out, so I would have to sand that down and do it again. So I went with my old throwback special walnut. I wanted it to be a darker stain, but I just wanted it to show off the pretty wood. Like you see that look, like I really didn't want to cover it up too much. And as I was applying this stain, I was really happy that I wasn't doing the white cabinet, because I did get some on the green and I had to just keep wiping it off, and that would not have worked if it was white. When doing white, you gotta just do all of it white. Yeah, it can't touch. So this was a good idea. So I decided to put it all in, make sure I didn't have anything that wasn't covered. And then as I cover everything, then I will come back through and just wipe it all off. So I did the sides, now I'm doing the top. And the top is pretty easy, I'm not gonna lie. It's not that much it's not as hard as the side because it's on top. So it's a little bit easier to do. And as I'm rubbing it, I'm like, this is the stain that I should have used in the beginning. I couldn't believe that, I went with ebony. The shelf is a different kind of wood. It seemed more like popular wood. I don't know where they got that from. It's not the same wood as the top and the sides. So I took this one upstairs to my craft room and decided to put the drawer in up there because that's where I have my X-Acto knife. That's where I have more space and it's, clearer. And so I decided to go through this again because this drawer needed it. I didn't want to have to deal with the stain that was in the bottom of it. That was, probably made by some kind of ink or color or something stained the drawer permanently. And so as much as I love the ideas of templates and things, I know that I'm horrible at measurements. So I needed to have just a little more of the piece out there. I'm just grateful that it's a square. And so with a square, it'll be much more easier. And I went with the side that was already there, pre-cut. I did not put the side that I cut down first because I never seemed to cut it straight enough. I know it looked like I was just cutting it all crazy, but no matter what I do, it's not going to be straight. So I went with their side first, the beginning of the roll, just to make sure I could get at least a straight side down and I won't have to use my knife to fix all the sides. And I took my time. And I know it seemed like I'm moving fast, but this is sped up. This is faster than I actually moved. For the sake of time, it was no use me showing this at the actual speed I was doing it on. One thing I tried and I felt like I still wasn't able to get every last bubble out. But it was very important that I was able to make sure all the sides and stuff was even and that the drawer looked neat. But I felt like the bubbles definitely could have been a little bit better. Okay, now it's time for the top coat. I got my usual poly, but this time this is a matte finish. I really don't like when the wood is all shiny. And so I use a sponge, which is my new love. I got a bunch of sponges. And so it's much better to just kind of rub it completely. It helps me control the bubbles. And I just love using a sponge. I cannot go back to a brush. And it also prevents, when you use a brush, it's almost like using a roller. So you don't have those streak marks that a top coat can bring if you're using a brush. So, like I said, I cannot go back to a brush at all. I definitely will be using a sponge from now on whenever I put a top coat on. Now, the sage part has a little bit of sheen because it was a satin finish, but the rest of the piece, I did not have a sheen on there. And I just, like I said, I don't like when wood is so shiny. Just, I don't know. Maybe if it was all wood, maybe it could have like a nice little slight shine. But I really prefer it if the wood just looked kind of natural. I am doing a lot of wiping because I keep seeing bubbles here and there, which I expected. Okay, skipping ahead to the backer board that I painted and that it looks really good. I thought by now I will have a staple gun and I'll be able to put this back in, but of course I'm dealing with this with hammer and nails, and I'm telling you, you're not going to see me hammer anything because I am not good at it, and it's like torturous. And so I'm just kind of lining it up and for the finished look. And so I hope you like what I did. I did preserve a lot of the wood for the wood lovers, and I left wood too. And I just thought it turned out way better than what I expected. And it's ready to serve. Thanks for watching.